So yesterday we covered the first half of the Buildcrafting Evolved article that the dev team put out. If you want to see that video, I'll leave it down in the pinned comment section below. And in today's video, we're going to be covering the second half of this article. But before we start, if you guys could all do me a huge favor, please hit that thumbs up button and also consider subscribing to the channel if you want to see more content like this in the future. It would mean the world to me. Alrighty, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right on into this. So yesterday we left off at the part about the artifact mods update. They say artifact mods are also being translated to unlockable perks. They will no longer need to be socketed, but rather unlocked for the duration of the season once earned and are passively applied to your loadout. So then they go ahead and give us an example of what this means, and basically, so in this example right now this season it is currently anti-barrier pulse rifle. So basically if you had that mod unlocked on your seasonal artifact, if you put any pulse rifle on your character, you'll just automatically benefit from the anti-barrier effect with the pulse rifle without needing to have that mod socketed in your gauntlets anymore. This is actually a huge dub for build crafting because usually seasonal artifact mods are very expensive and we have a very limited amount of energy to play around with on our armor, and a good example of this is unstoppable grenade launchers this season. So moving forward, we'll have to level up our artifact as normal, but we'll passively benefit from all of its mods, which is going to free up a ton of energy on our armor. Next up, they talk about artifice armor, and specifically its artifact mod slot. In Lightfall, it's going to be converted to a unique mod slot that grants 3 additional points to your character's stats, which is pretty cool and useful. Next up, they talk about how they want to remove match game because they feel like it's too heavy of a restriction, and they want people to have the freedom to create their builds to take advantage of the new element specific mods. Base shield resistance to non-matching damage types across the entire game is being adjusted to 50% similar to Gambit now, and we will have some other ways for you to do some bonus damage to shields that we will tell you about before launch. So personally, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I felt like 3 guardians in a well-coordinated group could definitely cover all 3 affinities to break all different types of shields, but I guess Bungie felt like it needed to be even easier, so is what it is. Moving on, Bungie is going to be giving us even more options to deal with champions in the game. They say they're also adding some anti-champion options to your subclasses to complement your weapons. First up, we have barrier champions with solar void and a strand counter. They say when using volatile rounds from your weapon, it will also pierce the barrier and stun the champion. When a player is radiant, their stacks pierce champions' shields and stun them, and strand will also have a method of piercing barriers. Next up, we have overload champions with arc stasis and void counters. Damaging an overload champion by triggering the jolted condition stuns the champion. Likewise, suppressing the champion stuns them, as thus slowing them with stasis. And lastly, we have unstoppable champions with arc, solar, stasis, and strand counters. Blinding an unstoppable champion instantly stuns them. Encasing them in stasis and then shattering it or triggering a solar ignition on them likewise stuns them. And strand will also include an unstoppable champion counter. Next up, they talk about moving some of the subfamilies of mods around. They say with the combat mod socket going away, many mods that once belonged to the charge with light and elemental well subfamilies of mods now fall under a revamped system known as armor charge and move to the armor slot specific sockets. They say socketing an armor mod that uses the armor charge system gives you access to the system. The functionality of taking charge, picking up an orb of power to gain 1 stack of the charge, is now granted to you whenever you have an armor charge mod equipped. Many mods that previously created elemental wells or gave you stacks of charge with light have been converted to instead create an orb of power. You can now hold between 0 and 3 stacks of armor charge by default, which appears as a buff in the status effect area. By socketing chest armor mods charged up, you can now increase the maximum number of armor charge stacks as high as 6. Some mods provide a passive ongoing benefit while you have any stacks of armor charge. When you have one of these armor mods equipped, every 10 seconds a stack of armor charge falls off if not consumed by something else. Players can extend this decay time by socketing the extend charge mod in the class item socket. For example, Font of Wisdom in the head socket will provide a bonus scan to intellect while you have any armor charge active. So it really looks like Bungie likes these armor charges a lot, so we'll just have to see how these play out. I'm not too sure if I will like this or not, but we'll just have to mess around with it when it's here. Some mods consume 1, 2, 3, or all stacks of armor charges on a particular trigger, granting you an instantaneous benefit when they do. A few other mods, and they give some examples here, can modify the armor charge system for you without providing you with a specific benefit while you have armor charge. Finishers will now consume armor charge and not dip into your super energy. Next up, they cover elemental wells. They say while many of the mods that previously created or benefited from elemental wells are being changed to instead focus on orbs of power, some aspects of elemental wells aren't going away entirely. Instead of creating elemental wells, each subclass will now create damage type specific spawned objects. We have ionic traces for arc, fire sprite for solar, void breaches for void, stasis shards will continue to be used for stasis, and Strand will also get its own, but they'll share details on that in the future. The ability to spawn these objects will not come from armor mods, but from subclasses instead. For example, while the Ember of Tempering Fragment is active for solar hunters, it will now create a fire sprite when you defeat an enemy with a solar weapon. Picking up any of these objects will grant ability energy or have other effects depending on your subclass build. For example, if you're running a solar subclass and you have the new Ember of Mercy fragment equipped, picking up a fire sprite will grant you a restoration effect. The number of these types of interactions will be limited at launch, but we intend to add to this system moving forward. Next up, they talk about the balancing act here, and basically when they removed armor affinities, they found that some mods were just redundant, so they got rid of them. Some were OP and they had to reel them back in. Some needed a buff, and obviously some new mods are coming into the game with Lightfall for some more healthy build crafting. That's basically the sum of it. They say an example of mods that aren't coming back along for the ride are Warmind cells. These are a relic of a different time and had already been nerfed in the past. They had a good run, but these mods will be deprecated and no longer available starting in Season 20 to make way for new options to consider when crafting your preferred combat style. And lastly, they leave us on this paragraph saying looking ahead, and basically they know that we have a lot of questions, but we're just going to have to wait until Lightfall and whenever they decide to start sharing some of this information with us. They say that they are going to be sharing information with us next month before Lightfall, so there's quite a few details coming along the way. Anyways, all these changes that Bungie are implementing, especially with this whole new mod system, look really good to me, and I can't wait to go ahead and try it out. I know that some of this stuff is a day late and $1 short, like loadouts and stuff like that. However, nonetheless, we are getting them, so I am grateful for that. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about all these changes coming in Season 20 for Lightfall. I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say about this. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video again, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Stay frosty.